We're Sarah Plain and Tall, Chapter 10. In Brielle's room, or Chapter 10, Chapter 7. Holy buckets. The dandelions in the field had gone by their heads soft as feathers. The summer roses were opening. Our neighbors, Matthew and Maggie, came to help Papa plow up the new cornfield. Sarah stood with us on the porch watching their wagon wind up the road, the two horses pulling it, and one tied in the back. I remember the last time we had stood there alone, Caleb and I, waiting for Sarah. Sarah's hair was in thick braids that circled her head, wild daisies tucked here and there. Papa had picked them for her. Old Bess and Jack ran along inside of the fence, whickering at the new horses. Papa needs 5 horses for the big gang plow, said Caleb told Sarah. Prairie grass is hard here. Matthew and Maggie came with their 2 children and a sack full of chickens. Maggie emptied the sack into the yard, and 3 red banty chickens clucked and scattered. They are for you, she told Sarah, for eating. Sarah loved the chickens. She clucked back to them and fed them grain. They followed her, shuffling and scratching primly in the dirt. I knew they would not be for eating. The children were young and named Rose and Violet after flowers. They hooted and laughed and chased the chickens, who flew up to the porch roof, and then the dogs, who crept quietly under the porch. Seal had long ago fled to the barn to sleep in the cool hay. Maggie and Sarah helped hitch the horses to the plow, and then they set up a big table in the shade of the barn, covering it with a quilt and a kettle of flowers in the middle. They sat on the porch while Caleb and Matthew and Papa began their morning plowing. I mixed biscuit dough just inside the door watching. You are so lonely, yes? Asked Maggie in her soft voice. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. I slowly stirred the dough. Maggie reached over and took Sarah's hand. I miss the hills of Tennessee sometimes, she said. I don't miss the hills, Maggie. I thought. I miss the sea, said Sarah. Don't miss the hills. Do not miss the sea. I stirred and stirred the dough. I miss my brother William, said Sarah, but he is married, and the house is hers now, not mine any longer. There are 3 old aunts who all squawk together like crows at dawn. I miss them too. There are always things to miss, said Maggie, no matter where you are. I looked out and saw Papa and Matthew and Caleb working. Rose and Violet ran in the field. I felt something brush my leg and looked down. It was Nick, wagging his tail. I would miss you, Nick, I whispered. I would. I knelt down and scratched his ears. I miss Mama. I nearly forgot, said Maggie on the porch. I have something more for you. I carried the bowl inside and watched Maggie lift a low wooden box out of the wagon. Plants, said Sarah, for your garden. My garden? Sarah bent down to touch the plants. Zinnias and marigolds and a wild feverfew, said Maggie. You must have a garden, wherever you are. Sarah smiled. I have a garden in Maine with dalilahs and columbines and nasturtiums, the color of the sun when it sets. I don't know if nasturtiums would grow here. Try. You must have a garden. We planted the flowers by the porch, turning over the soil and patting it around them, and then watering. Lottie and Nick came to sniff, and the chickens walked in the dirt, leaving their prints. In the field, the horses pulled the plow up and down under the hot sun. Maggie wiped her face, leaving a streak of dirt. Soon you can drive the wagon over to my house, and I will give you more. I have tansy. Sarah frowned. I have never driven a wagon. I can teach you, said Maggie, and so can Anna or Caleb and Jacob. Sarah turned to me. Can you? She asked. Can you drive the wagon? I nodded. And Caleb? Yes, in Maine, I would walk to town. Here it is different, said Maggie. Here you will drive. Way off in the sky, the clouds gathered. Matthew and Papa and Caleb came in from the fields, their work done. We all ate in the shade. We are glad you are here, said Matthew to Sarah. A new friend for Maggie misses her friends sometimes. Sarah nodded. There was always something to miss, no matter where you are, she said, smiling at Maggie. Rose and Violet fell asleep in the grass, and their bellies full of meat and greens and biscuits. And when it was time to go, Papa and Matthew lifted them into the wagon to sleep on blankets. Sarah walked slowly behind the wagon for a long time, waving and watching it disappear. Caleb and I ran to bring her back, the chickens running wildly behind us. What shall we name them? I asked Sarah, laughing at the chickens followed us into the house. Can you believe that? Chickens in their house. I smiled. I was right. The chickens would not be for eating. And then Papa came in just before the rain, bringing Sarah the first roses of summer. Aww, the daddy is romantic. Okay, read your paper, see what it says. See ya.